So today our speaker will be Len Reo, the president and founder at the Ativo Group. Len got his bachelor's degree at Providence College. He has an MBA in finance from Cal Poly Pomona, and he's also certified in production and inventory management by the Association for Supply Chain Management, also known as APICS. Len also spent 12 years as a cost accounting manager, as well as a plant controller for several different companies prior to founding Ativo in 1993. Now, just to give you a little background about Ativo, we work primarily in the manufacturing, distribution, and e-commerce industry. We have 3 offices located in Irvine, California, in Conyers, Georgia, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we've been around for almost 3 decades. One of our specialties is providing financial control around inventory management for business owners and CFOs. I'm going to pass it over to Len so he can get us started and introduce what we'll be going over today. Len?
Thank you, Emily. So why would anyone implement cycle accounting in the first place? And why are we spending our time discussing this today? The reason is that it is a proven best practice to ensure inventory accuracy, which means that the actual inventory on hand matches the company's inventory records, and the corresponding asset valuation is therefore correct. That's why we're discussing it. But who cares about that? Well, certainly the CFO and controllers care. One of their primary jobs is to safeguard the assets of the company. And inventory is typically one of the largest assets of the company. And also, the last conversation that a CFO wants to have with the company president is, hey, remember that $1 million profit we made? Well, we just completed our physical inventory and I have some bad news. Supply chain, procurement, and production control also care. Because if the inventory records are accurate, they can rely on that information to make critical decisions about planning and replenishment. Some of you may be familiar with the term Class A MRP shop. This refers to a company that can rely on the replenishment advice provided by the material requirements planning system, which, and among other prerequisites for being Class A MRP, they have achieved consistent high 90% inventory accuracy. Sales and customer service also cares. Their customer promise dates and order fulfillment process relies heavily on the inventory records. And in these days of Amazon next day or same day delivery, the public is becoming much less tolerant of missed deliveries. Excellent customer service is no longer optional. You know, I often visit with clients and prospects, and the first thing they tell me is, we have an inventory problem. And in a very empathetic voice, I tell them, no, you don't really. Your inventory system works just fine. You probably have an everything else problem. After I get the usual blank stare, I assure them that the inventory system is doing its job correctly, keeping track of all the ins and outs of inventory, but therein lies the problem. I go on to explain that it will be necessary to evaluate the transactions and processes that affect inventory to solve this inventory problem. Tell me more, is the typical response. I go on to explain the many transaction types that affect inventory balances and the types of error conditions that can cause incorrect inventory balances. These error conditions need to be identified and their associated processes corrected to avoid future errors of the same kind. Cycle counting is designed to not only count a subset of items every day, but to analyze any variances and determine which broken processes cause the error. That process can then be improved to eliminate the error from happening again. So the biggest difference between a cycle count and a physical inventory is that with cycle counting, the root cause analysis and subsequent process improvement is a way to continually improve inventory accuracy. A physical inventory will be exactly accurate once a year for about a day. And then it's all downhill until the next physical count. Our objective today is to understand what a cycle count program is and ways to implement cycle counting. We're going to dive into why cycle counting is considered a best practice compared to a physical inventory process. In order to understand how it is implemented, we'll need to review how to classify inventory items, assign count frequencies and cycle count codes to facilitate the daily item count selection. We'll review the type of reporting and feedback on the outcome of daily counts and trends. Finally, we'll confirm some of the business benefits of implementing cycle counting, as the payoff is really huge. So let's make sure we have a clear understanding of what a cycle count is compared to a physical inventory, because I'm sure this question will come up when you discuss cycle counting with your client or with your management team. You may recall that a physical or wall-to-wall inventory, as it is sometimes called, is conducted a minimum of once a year, where every item is counted to satisfy auditors and properly value ending inventory. While it helps to have accurate inventory at least once per year, the primary reason for a physical is for accurate year-end financial statements and not necessarily for the ongoing management needs of the business. Given the amount of effort required, a physical inventory usually requires some period where operations need to be completely shut down. And shutting down operations has a significant cost associated with it in terms of lost productivity. A physical is also typically an all-hands-on-deck effort, meaning it often requires personnel from many departments within the company to get it done in the shortest period of time possible. So personnel that are not familiar with the items in units of measure often make count errors as a result. Cycle count purists will argue that a full physical inventory can potentially be an accuracy setback for operations where cycle counting is implemented. Cycle counting, on the other hand, is a daily process that happens throughout the entire year. Some inventory items are counted frequently during the year, depending on their importance and value to operations, while other inventory items are counted a minimum of once per year, like the physical inventory. Cycle counting is performed by assigned and trained individuals as one of their daily tasks. In a small company, this is usually in addition to their regular job. In larger firms, it might be a full-time job for several people. Variance analysis and root cause determination are an essential part of the daily task, which forms the basis for regular reporting. This information is extremely important to management so that process improvements can be made to avoid such variances in the future. Inventory accuracy and other key performance reporting is part of the cycle counting process. And this information is regularly shared with the entire company. This helps encourage a culture of accountability where inventory accuracy is everyone's job. Now, many companies can incorporate cycle counting into their operation to the point where an annual physical inventory is no longer required, where company management has achieved the confidence in their policies and programs, and their auditors have accepted cycle count results in lieu of an annual physical. Other companies utilize cycle counting to improve inventory accuracy on an ongoing basis, but still conduct an annual physical inventory. Many follow this path until they are confident in their cycle counting program before eliminating the physical altogether. Let's discuss why cycle counting is considered a best practice in inventory management and how it results in better inventory control and overall accuracy. Since inventory is typically counted on a daily basis, and those transactional errors and their causes are corrected quickly, fewer downstream errors occur. Every error has an associated cost. So fewer errors results in significant cost savings throughout the year. Not to mention that the overall higher count frequency compared to once per year itself results in improved inventory accuracy. Cycle counting is performed by trained personnel who are familiar with the items themselves, along with their unique characteristics such as units of measure. This avoids count mistakes that could be made by the office personnel or other resources that are pressed into service to get a physical inventory done as quickly as possible. And with cycle counting, the plant shutdown is eliminated along with the cost of the lost productivity. Cycle counting supports continuous improvement efforts, since the process requires variance and root cause analysis, which provides the basis for process improvements to be made. It is essentially a continuous auditing technique. Cycle counting results and inventory accuracy trends are prominently displayed where all operations personnel can see them. This supports that company culture where inventory control and accuracy is everyone's job. And CPA firms and other auditing entities such as bankers will accept the cycle counting process in lieu of a wall-to-wall physical inventory. They may require a spot check on a few items as part of their due diligence, but cycle counting is widely accepted in validating inventory valuation. So let's take a look at a case study with a real Ativo client that is a manufacturer of automotive parts. The issue that our client was explaining to me in this picture was that the actual sheet metal item counts were consistently less than the record showed, requiring a manual count every week for reordering purposes. So we picked a common sheet metal item, and using their ERP system, we did a bill of material where used lookup for that raw material to find a high volume assembly where the steel was used. Upon reviewing the item's bill of materials, the quantity of the steel item used was exactly correct to the dimensions of this product. However, this assembly was produced using a stamping process that created a significant amount of scrap metal. There was no scrap factor on the BOM, so the amount of steel being used out of inventory for each assembly produced was being understated. Hence, the inventory records would always be higher than what was actually in inventory. After reviewing a few more similar BOMs, we realized that this was a consistent oversight in setting up their bills of material. And the fix was to review all of the bills of material that used sheet metal and apply scrap factors. I mentioned that a cycle counting program would have caught this error, along with many others like it. Customer said, "Tell me more about this cycle counting program." So let's talk about the nuts and bolts of how to go about implementing a cycle count program. The first step is to determine inventory classifications or groups in order to identify how frequently to count specific items during the year. There are a few more details to discuss, but daily count item selection are largely based on item classifications. Now, one of the most widely used methods for classifying items is the ABC method. You can have other categories as well, but for our discussion today, we'll focus on A, B, and C classifications. A items are those that have a high value or high velocity. B items less so, and C items are slow moving or low in value. A items are counted most frequently, such as every month. B items counted less frequently, such as on a quarterly schedule. And C items are counted a minimum of once per year. So let's take a look at how to go about determining these classifications, and then some reasons why you might make adjustments and move things around to those classifications. One common method of determining item classification is to consider the annual usage value of all items, ranked from highest to lowest. Then start the ABC assignment process by identifying the items using a 70-20-10 formula. The items that make up 70% of the total annual usage become the A items. The next 20 become the Bs, and the rest are classified as C items. On this slide is an example of how the 70-20-10 method can segregate items with high usage value as a starting point for ABC classification. My example on this slide shows that there were twice as many B items as A items and twice as many C items as B items. You can expect a similar distribution, but your results will most likely vary from my perfect distribution here. Most companies will find that the number of C items is a very large percentage of the total unique item numbers, but represent a pretty low value of combined annual usage. The 70-20-10 method is a really good starting point, but there are many reasons why you might move a B or a C item into the A classification, for example. Items may be desirable or valuable and subject to theft. Our case study auto parts manufacturer that we discussed earlier had an inventory of really cool t-shirts that had a very high inventory shrinkage. Even though they were low in value, it was important for them to keep a closer watch on those and prevent them from walking out in people's lunch boxes. Tolerating employee theft is never a good business culture. Other types of shrinkage may occur and go unrecorded, such as scrap within a production order, like our auto parts manufacturer, or items that get damaged in the warehouse but go unreported and just get tossed into the trash. Any item that has a long lead time with infrequent orders is a candidate for classification as an A item. Having an unplanned stockout condition on such an item where your records are showing that it was in stock and available will create a significant customer service problem. Items that carry expiration dates are typically lot or batch controlled to confirm their unique expiration dates. There may also be other characteristics within a specific lot, such as country of origin, that are important for maintaining compliance. The variance behavior of specific items is another reason to potentially adjust its classification and move it up or down in count frequency. Items that are consistently showing a variance need to be counted more frequently, perhaps classified as an A item for a period. Likewise, A items that consistently show few variances can be moved to B or C. If counting a specific item is particularly time-consuming, or stored in silos or tanks, or otherwise difficult to count, consider moving them to a lower classification to reduce the count frequency and the corresponding daily amount of time needed for cycle counting. Items that are not on your premises, such as those on consignment or stored at a contract manufacturer or 3PL, need to be handled separately. As a best practice, those items should reside in separate warehouse locations and controlled by a separate inventory counting policy. So a little more on why we might move classifications. Unlike just supporting the ending inventory valuation, a cycle count program is designed to support operations, not get in the way and slow things down. Moving items from one ABC classification or count frequency to another allows you to mold the program around your operations. While the reasons to do so are many, some or more of the more obvious ones is what we'll discuss next. First of all, it's a human resources consideration. No company has unlimited resources for this purpose. In most small to medium-sized companies, cycle counting is usually a task that is assigned to personnel in addition to their regular job in operations. It's pretty common to find instances where there are several people assigned to perform daily cycle counting for the last 2 to 3 hours of their shift. The program must be doable. The number of daily counts assigned for all classifications must be fairly consistent from day to day and achievable within the allotted time constraints. More on this in a later slide. As time goes on, many things will change in operations, such as new suppliers being added, plant personnel turnover, new product lines being introduced, and so on. These changes will dictate different inventory mix and behavior. Also, new issues affecting inventory accuracy will present themselves, warranting moving items to a higher frequency classification to help get the issues identified and resolved. And finally, production and distribution plans will change from time to time, requiring more or less focus on certain items. As we mentioned earlier, one of the main purposes of the item classification is to group the items into count frequencies. But we need a policy, not just classification. On this slide is a typical count frequency policy, with A items counted monthly, B items quarterly, and C items once per year. Now, it's not unusual to see B items counted 6 times per year or C items counted twice per year, but this is the kind of policy that we need to put in place for our cycle count program. I also mentioned that there can be more than just ABC classifications to suit the unique needs of a business. Those classifications can be assigned any count frequency that makes sense, including a daily count where required. Now, once the items are classified and a count policy is determined, the number of counts to be executed each day can be determined. The math is pretty simple. Multiplying the number of items in a classification by an average of 250 days in the year, we can calculate the number of counts required per year. Then, dividing the counts per year by the 250 days will tell us how many of that classification must be counted on a daily basis. Now, given that we have 1,750 items total in our example, our calculations are showing that we need to count 12 A items, 8 B items, and 4 C items to achieve our count policy. This adds up to an average of 24 counts per day. It has been my experience that one primary counting resource working 2 to 3 hours per day should be able to count 20 to 30 items per day and do the rest of the task as well. Okay, So now that we have our count frequency, how do we know which items to count on any given day? This is done using cycle count codes, which are assigned to all items in inventory so that they may be selected to be counted on any given day. Now, one way to do this is to combine the item classification with the Julian day of the year. As you may recall, the Julian day of the year is simply the numeric value of the day of that calendar year, where January 1st is day 1, February 1st is day 32, and so on. Since we need to make 12 A item counts, the first 12 items on the A list, like item 101 to 112, if that's the way they were numbered in our example, are assigned cycle count code 1 and would be counted on Julian day 1 or January 1st. The second 12 A items are assigned count code 2, beginning with item 113, and those would be counted on Julian day 2. Then on day 32, which is February 1st, we're back to counting the A items with the cycle count code of 1 again. So there would be a similar count code table for B and C items, ensuring that they are counted 4 times per year and 1 time per year, respectively. The combination of the count codes, such as A1, B1, and C1, would make up the cycle count instructions for any particular Julian day of the year. In addition to the method we just discussed, using cycle count codes, there are other cycle count code assignment methods to consider. For example, the zone method is ideal for fast-moving items that are stored together, such as in a bulk pick zone. All items in a particular zone would be counted on specific days. If a floating location or random bin location system is used, where items are put away in the warehouse wherever an open slot exists, it is best to use a combination of cycle count code and bin location audit. A bin location audit will uncover items that have been misplaced from one bin to another. Another approach is to use a selected range of bin locations to count, such as the primary pick locations in a specific aisle in the warehouse, and exclude the overstock inventory quantities stored above. In this type of count, item quantities within a bin location can be confirmed. Classifications and count frequencies are important, but there are other times when a cycle count of a particular item would be appropriate and should be added to the daily count. First of all, when an item has gone negative in inventory. This is definitely a red flag telling you there's a mistake to be corrected. Or when the inventory records are showing on-hand quantities, but the items either aren't there or the count is just way off. A great time to count items is when an item reaches 0 quantity on hand in the inventory records. You'd be surprised at how many 0 quantity items you can count in a day when they aren't there. Another good time is confirming a count prior to placing an order. The reason being is that chances are the on-hand quantity of that item is very low, which is a good time to count items. It could also be very helpful for confirming high dollar purchases before that purchase order goes out. Also, confirming the qualitative data related to a specific lot or batch, like the expiration dates, the country of origin, or other information about the lot or serial data and those items. So I probably sound repetitive here, but it is very important to be realistic about the effort required and to allocate the resources necessary. So once the math is done, it's time for a sanity check. Can we do this every day? Every company has a limit to human resources, and management's challenge is to ensure that the daily tasks required for cycle counting are doable on a consistent basis for this program to work. In terms of personnel, you will need at least one person from operations that is familiar with the inventory items and trained on the policy and procedure to do the actual daily counting. You will also need one person that can assist with recounts and audit the procedure. You will also need someone to assist with the variance analysis, perhaps from the finance team. But in all staffing plans, make sure to plan for enough time every day for the following tasks. After the count happens, entering manual counts to the inventory system might be required if you're not using barcode scanning automation, which might update the inventory count in real time. Also, performing the necessary recounts. Recounts will be necessary on most days, and it is a best practice to have a second person perform the recounts. Doing the variance and root cause analysis is essential. Since this whole program is highly dependent on the system in place and the source documents, by I mean system in place, I'm talking about their particular ERP system or inventory system, it is very helpful to have someone from the finance team to assist with this effort. And then updating the daily management reporting on inventory accuracy and root cause analysis and getting it distributed in a timely manner can't be overlooked. Let's discuss the reporting requirements for a cycle count program. First of all, let's discuss measuring accuracy. The typical approach to measuring inventory accuracy is to divide the counted quantity by the on-hand record quantity. So if an item had a quantity of 100 on hand in the records, and we only physically count 98, the accuracy is 98%, correct? That's a pretty high level of inventory accuracy, I would think. Well, not if we're counting Rolex watches. Cycle counting uses a very strict rule for measuring accuracy. It's either a hit or a miss. A hit is 100% accuracy, and a miss will score a 0 for that item. However, we also need to take into consideration count tolerances, which need to be set at the item or inventory group level. For instance, many bulk items or inexpensive parts are counted using scales or read from gauges, and count accuracy needs to include a plus or minus percentage given the daily variability that can occur in their item count method. So in this way, I suggest that we assign a 0 tolerance for our Rolex watches, but perhaps a 5% tolerance on the counts of nuts and bolts. That would be reasonable before we called it a miss. And let's keep a close watch on those really cool t-shirts as well. So the sage advice that in business, what gets measured gets managed, is certainly true for cycle counting and inventory accuracy. Timely and regular reporting is essential for the success of the program, as well as the validation that the policy is working. Results of daily counts and trend reporting is important to continually support the company culture that inventory accuracy is everyone's responsibility. This reporting information should be displayed prominently in the lunchroom or by the time clock where it can be seen by all employees. Company meetings should include updates and progress with the cycle counting program. Each company will have unique items that are critical to operations that need close monitoring. Tracking the key performance indicators of those items generally sets the tone for all items for that company. The regular reporting on inventory accuracy is very informative about the overall health of the company's systems and controls. In the far right picture, I believe we have a company president complaining to a controller or CFO about the lack of controls over inventory. Although I'm not a big fan of the president's management style, she's definitely getting the point across that something needs to be done to fix their inventory problem. Considering some of the most important types of reporting, an accuracy trend report is a great visual to immediately indicate whether the cycle count program is delivering the desired results of overall improved accuracy. It is helpful to see this type of trending for the entire inventory, as well as the major item groups such as assemblies, sheet metal, PC boards, or whatever makes sense for the particular business. And perhaps even reporting on accuracy trends by ABC classification. In the chart on this slide, which could be for a particular item or item group, we can easily see that there was a dramatic improvement in overall accuracy between January and April of the year. Some kind of process improvement must have been accomplished to achieve this kind of improvement. Since my own professional roots come from a cost accounting background, root cause analysis is kind of second nature to me. I'm also extremely passionate about continuous improvement, so I want to elaborate on one of the most important differences between an annual physical and a cycle count: the variance analysis and subsequent discovery that determines the root cause of the problem. Now, in order to get started on the right foot, it is important to properly state the problem. An example of clearly stating the problem, thinking back to our case study, would be item 100 sheet metal counts are consistently lower than our perpetual quantity, and it appears that a sampling of similar items exhibits similar behavior. Even though our discovery may show a significant root cause, we should also consider that there might be multiple causes for this type of variance. This can only be confirmed by making the necessary process improvements and then continuing cycle counting the items in question. There also needs to be a systematic approach to identifying the root cause of the issue so that individuals assigned with the process improvement initiatives can be confident that the required changes will truly be process improvements and not a waste of their time. For example, a root cause policy that states that A, the inventory transaction history report will be used to identify total quantity received and total quantity issued over a period of time. B, transaction quantities will be compared one to the other to identify any potential anomalies, to rule out missing a zero in a transaction quantity. C, any suspect transaction source documents will be reviewed and compared to the transaction quantity. And D, the history of previous counts of this item and any corrective actions that were taken for this item or item group will be reviewed for insight, and so forth. That might make up the root cause analysis policy. The root cause analysis effort is designed to provide management information to be used to continuously improve operations. These improvements that are made should be celebrated, along with the wins made in improving inventory accuracy. Just a few words on cycle count policy. Your cycle count program must have a comprehensive written policy governing the procedures used, since the requirement for accurately reflecting inventory valuation as one of the largest assets on the balance sheet is a non-negotiable financial requirement for tax and audit compliance. This is especially true for a cycle count program that will replace a wall-to-wall physical inventory policy. Under generally accepted accounting principles, companies must count their complete inventory on an annual basis or implement a perpetual or cycle counting system. Presented here is a fairly complete list of topics that the policy should cover. And we've covered some of these already, but I'd like to comment on the training and awareness guidelines. So I'm going to step on the soapbox for a minute, if you allow me. Cycle counting is a proven best practice to accomplish inventory accuracy, which is an operational necessity for a company to thrive and grow. Management must embrace this goal and make it part of the company's culture by instilling responsibility for inventory accuracy in everyone that has anything to do with inventory, from purchasing to receiving to manufacturing to warehouse management to sales and customer service. It is definitely not just the responsibility of the warehouse. In other words, if you see something, say something should be part of the culture of inventory accuracy. Using publicly visible reporting on previous day count results, along with inventory accuracy trends and goals, helps reinforce this responsibility. Perhaps information in the company newsletter about the program, occasional emails from management to all employees, pizza parties for achieving a target accuracy goal, and other methods should be deployed to enforce the culture. Training and awareness will get the job done. There are a few topics that we haven't touched on yet. I call them a few must-haves to be successful with cycle counting. Inventory item identification is a critical part of cycle counting. You need positive identification, preferably on the item itself, to be able to confirm that you are counting the right item. Even though your count resources should be familiar with inventory items, they are not expected to memorize item numbers. An orderly warehouse is very important to getting counts done efficiently. Whenever I go on a plant or warehouse tour, I can tell immediately by the care taken in keeping the warehouse organized and clean whether a cycle count program will work or not. Because if a cycle count resource is spending their time constantly searching for stuff, the program will fail. When it comes to comparing a count quantity to a perpetual inventory quantity, the perpetual inventory records need to have been updated with all of the transactions that have occurred up to the time of the count. Or a variance will undoubtedly occur, a false one at that. A real-time inventory system utilizing barcode scanning to record inventory movement as it occurs is optimal to ensure update of the perpetual inventory. In the absence of barcode scanning, timing of entering count quantities will need to be coordinated with operations to make sure that all transactions that would affect inventory balances have been entered. One of the most frequent cause of variance is confusion over units of measure. Although the unit of measure should be included on the count sheet to avoid this confusion, the count system should be flexible to allow multiple units of measure for counting. For example, item 100 might have 3 cartons plus 2 pallets. Think of the cycle counter in the aisle. They can see the 3 cartons in the bin used for order picking and 2 pallets up above. They will not know how many cartons are on a pallet, but the inventory system should store the quantity per pallet and make the count conversion automatically. So they'd be able to enter 3 cartons plus 2 pallets. That's our count. The item selection for cycle counting should be coordinated with operations if specific items will be highly utilized in production, which would make the item count very difficult. Also, coordinating counts when the on-hand quantity is lowest, such as just prior to receiving a new truckload, will make the counting job a lot easier. Remember, cycle count code classifications should be used as a guideline. Design the system for flexibility in counting where common sense in support of operations should be considered. The business benefits of cycle counting are many. Improvements in inventory accuracy helps every function within the business and avoids stockouts and the resulting lost business. Now, while there is a cost associated with performing cycle counting, the increased operational efficiency and productivity far outweighs the cost of the program. And the reduction in plant fire drills to get product delivered, or incurring expediting costs or overtime costs, or having to adjust production schedules due to shortages and other distractions dramatically increases overall productivity. The other side of the increase in productivity are the cost savings. Some of these are hard costs, such as expediting expenses. Others are more soft costs that are difficult to quantify, but you know they are there. The most important benefit, though, is about the customer. Being able to achieve a sense of confidence in your customers on your delivery dates is priceless and ensures their loyalty. That concludes our formal presentation today, and I hope you found it informative. We would love to entertain any questions that you might have, so please use the chat feature to enter your questions, and I'll be happy to clarify or expand on anything that we have to discuss today or similar types of issues.
Thanks, Len. So we do have a couple of questions in the queue. First off, if you want a copy of the presentation, I'm saying a couple of things about that. You can just email us at marketing@ativoerp.com. Our contact information is going to be in the next slide, and we can send you a copy of the presentation. Okay, so first question, Len. It's a two-parter. How do we handle cycle counting in environments where transactions take place during the time frame between when the item was physically counted versus when the count is entered? The second part is, on high activity environments, is it better to count after hours or on a weekend?
Okay, to answer the first part of that question, this could exist in a 24-hour operation or something like that, where items are constantly being transacted. So there's something in most inventory systems called an inventory freeze. And items can be moved, say, from one location to another to be used for transaction purposes. And then the items that remain can be frozen so that they are then compared to the count quantity. That's a typical inventory count functionality in most ERP systems, but it does require that knowledge of within operations that, hey, this is where we're picking from. These items are being counted, and then they can be released once the count is completed and any recounts are done. And the second part of the question, if you could repeat that again.
Yeah. On high activity environments, is it better to count after hours or on a weekend?
Well, certainly after hours is going to be a whole lot easier. And I wouldn't exclude counting on weekends. But remember, cycle counting really is a daily task. And perhaps you have some personnel in this instance where instead of coming in at 7 a.m., they come in at 10 a.m. and work until 8 p.m. To allow that high volume environment to essentially settle down and allow, a reasonable count to be taken place.
Okay, great. We have a bunch of questions. We're going to try to get through all of them, but the next one is, how do I get my team on board with cycle counting? It would take all departments and management to agree with cycle counting. Is there a way to phase up to it?
So yeah, there's two answers to this. First is executive ownership and management have to embrace it as a company goal and policy. If you don't have the support from the top, it's not going to work. So that's the first and most important prerequisite. And secondly, the ongoing reporting and so forth will allow you to ramp up to an inventory accuracy where you can let go of the physical inventory. I mentioned in one of the slides that many companies start using cycle counting just to improve accuracy while they're still doing an annual physical until they get the procedures and the disciplines down where they can eliminate the physical inventory, but because their accuracy records are showing, hey, we're really doing the cycle counting properly. So I don't think there's any company that can just, make a change overnight without ramping up like that over some period of time. It may take, 1 or 2 years before you can actually eliminate the physical inventory.
Mm-hmm. Next question is, do you offer consulting services per charge? If so, how does that work?
So one of the things that we do here at Ativo is process improvement consulting. And whenever we're making recommendations like implement a cycle count program to improve your overall accuracy and the resulting business benefits, we can then follow up and provide a very comprehensive program for your specific company, using all of the kind of concepts and such that we talked about today, and perhaps some that are unique to your particular industry. So that is something that we do and have done for companies. And many of them have gone on to eliminate their annual physical inventory.
Okay, last question. Technically, the cycle counting team reports into supply chain or to finance?
The inventory accuracy is always the responsibility of warehouse management. So the people reporting in belong to the warehouse management team. Now, we also spoke about having someone from finance participating, perhaps in the root cause analysis or maybe even recounts. It's a collaborative effort, but inventory accuracy should never shift away from warehouse management or inventory control or whatever your particular company calls it, because it's all about who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, who's informed. Warehouse is responsible, and that's who we have to turn to for the final responsibility. Great.
There was one more comment about, it was anonymous, so I'm not sure who this came from. It may be from Manuel. He's talking to Chris, one of our sales team, and about improving their ERP system. Manuel, if this was you, you can reach out to Len and he can answer something a little bit more clear for you. His email is on the next slide, or is it? I'll put it in the chat right now if you want to reach out to him directly. And other than that, we are done with our Q&A section. Len, do you want to move to the last slide real quick for us, just so we can get anything else? Oh, sorry, Manuel, I said that wasn't from you. Whoever that was from can reach out to Len if they need to. Well, thank you all for joining us today. We hope you all gained some really valuable insight. We are trying to end this presentation just a few minutes early. If you can, please take a moment to fill out our survey about today's webinar. It will only take 1 minute. The link is in the chat, and we would really, really appreciate your feedback. A recording of the presentation will be sent out tomorrow to everyone that attended today. You can always reach out to us by heading to our website or giving us a call. If you do have any questions about today's presentation or want to join us for events in the future, you can contact us at marketing@ativoerp.com or email us at info@ativoconsulting.com. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful day.